Welcome to the Loud and Brave podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about something that relates to something I write about pretty extensively in my book, Becoming Loud and Brave. And it's in response to a question, or a few questions actually, regarding this topic that someone who read the book sent to me and asked me if I would address here on the podcast. So that's what we're going to get into. In the book, Becoming Loud and Brave, I talk pretty extensively about different seasons, different times in my life where I have had people who mentored me, and whether it was in the music industry or working with churches or just working in different aspects of the non-for-profits that I've been involved in. And all along the way, I've been very fortunate to have people who have been willing to pour into me and impart to me, spend time with me, imparting to me things that they've learned and help me. No one, I don't believe that anyone sort of is born fully evolved as a leader. And so because of that, I write about that there's been times where I was very aware of a deficit in me that didn't know how to sort of move forward, whether that was in the music industry or leading a non-for-profit. And I've spent a long time now really doing both. I write about in the book, I write about the first probably musical mentor I had that I can look back and say they at least mentored me intentionally was Claire Parr, who signed me to Curb Records. Now, before that, obviously, I had people like my parents and even my grandparents who were musical and who taught me how to play and sing, and cousins and uncles, because I grew up in a very musical family. And so in some regard, all of them were mentors. But Claire was really the first person who, as an adult, I looked at in that way. I think, growing up in the situation I did, the other people who were mentoring me, they were my family mostly. And so I just sort of looked at them as that's mom and dad, or that's my Grammy and grandpa, or my cousin or uncle, or something like that. So as an adult, Claire was the first person who spent time really pouring into me and imparting to me things that she had learned in her journey and making me better at what I was doing at the time, and really preparing me for what would come. And then, you fast forward to a different time in my life where I began leading a non-for-profit that is now called Fountain Family Worship Center. And when I started that journey, I was very aware that I needed help. I needed mentors. So in response to that, John from Kentucky had written me and asked me a few questions. First of all, the first question he asked, he said, "How did you choose your mentors?" And the answer to that is, I didn't always choose them. Sometimes they chose me. In the instance of Claire Parr, who signed me to Curb, that was her decision to sign us. I mean, we said yes, obviously, but she was, I tell the story of how she came to know us and choose us and sign us. So in that regard, she chose me. And sometimes that happens. Sometimes people come alongside you and they say they recognize something in you, and they will say, if you're willing to let me help you, I will do this for you. Now, there are other times in my life where I have purposefully chosen them. And that was very much the case when I began leading Fountain. I made a list of people that I would like to pour into me. One of them was a local Christian businessman. One was John Maxwell. George W. Bush was also on that list. I don't know why I chose him at the time. I thought he would be a good one. He never ended up being someone that I connected with, other than just watching what everyone else did on TV, But there were others too. But I chose the other two the Christian businessman that was a local man here where I live, and then John Maxwell, because they had both led organizations with integrity. They had been good team builders. They had both sort of started from nothing, from the ground up, and I mean, and built something big that was bigger than them, that inspired people. And I wanted to know how to do that. And they were both believers. They were both followers of Christ. And I valued that as well. So that was how I chose them. And I think that's going to be different for everyone. I was looking for people who were similar to me, but also farther along down the road than I was. People who could help me get to the place where I knew that I needed to go. I was fortunate enough to have both of them say yes to me. And so I'm very thankful for that. And I also chose people like Zig Ziglar, who I never met, but I read pretty much everything that he had written at that point, and others who I would read their books or watch their podcast, not podcasts, but, YouTube videos or whatever they were. So I chose them based on similarities, but also differences, which leads me to the next question that John asked me. And he said, did you agree with them on everything? And the answer to that is no, I didn't agree with him on everything. So I think that is an important distinction when you're choosing mentors, that you don't have to agree with them on everything. I'll give you a good example of sort of a more recent one, and that's the guy most of us are familiar with, Charlie Kirk. Charlie and I agree on a great many things. There are some things we didn't agree on, but that's okay. I just find that you're going to very rarely agree with someone on everything. And if you do, I'm a little suspicious of it, frankly. So no, I don't think you have to agree with them on everything. I do think you need to have an open mind and be willing to have your mind changed and challenged. That doesn't mean that you're going to end up changing your mind, but at least being open to having your mind changed, or your thoughts expanded, or gaining a new perspective. I mean, what's the point, really, if you're not open to that? In some instances, your mind will be changed and you'll have a different point of view at the end of it. In some instances, you won't. And who knows, maybe you'll change their mind. The next question that he asked regarding mentors, he sent me a list of questions. So I'm just sort of going down that list, and maybe, hopefully this will speak to some of you if you're looking for mentors, or, you're having maybe the same questions that he did. Did you ever discard any of your mentors? And I was trying to think about that all through my life. I think there have been some that I've discarded. I mean, I know there have, actually. Not like, not in a uncivil way. I know there have been some that at one time were mentors of mine, and at some point we diverged so much on just the core of what we believed or the way we looked at the world, that I no longer felt like it was worth the time. This is going to sound really terrible, but worth the time that it took to let that person be an influence in my life, versus maybe having someone else who was farther down the road that I wanted to be on. Now, you may say, does that contradict what you just said about, do you have to agree with them? You don't have to agree with them about everything, but I think there are some, maybe for everyone, there's some non-negotiables. And that's probably what I'm talking about with this. Did you discard any of your mentors ever in your life? I think the ones I discarded, or just sort of, we grew apart, was because there was just a difference of worldview or something, and some things to me that were non-negotiable. Now, am I still friends with them? Yeah, I am. I still care about them. We're still, I don't see them all the time or every day, but there's no animus or anything. It just, the relationship changed, it evolved over time. So that happens. It's not a bad thing. And the truth is, sometimes you're going to outgrow your mentors. And that's something that I experienced. And it's not to sound puffed up or prideful. It just happens sometimes that people who once were farther down the road that you're on, you will surpass them. You'll surpass them either because they just stopped growing and you didn't, or, something else. But in those instances, you'll probably set that aside. Their relationship will change. And in that regard, you could say you discarded them as a mentor, not as necessarily a friend or something else. And then the next question that John asked me is, do you still have mentors? Yes, of course I do. Now, they're not the same as they were when I started the journey at Fountain, or even started the journey in the music industry. Some of them, Claire, sadly she passed on a few years ago. Now, I will say this, I'm so thankful that during the time that Claire was with us, I was journaling, as I have my whole life since the age of 9. I was journaling then too. And so I wrote down so much of the things we talked about. And so in that regard, yes, she still mentors me because I still revisit those things. And if you're not a journaler, man, I just encourage you to think about maybe doing that, because that is something I'm so thankful for now. There's some of the people that are no longer here with us on this earth that were mentors of mine. I wrote down so much of what they shared with me, and I can go back and it's like, we can have I can relive those conversations, and they're still pouring into me. I'm still learning things from them. So yes, I still have them. They're not all the same as they were, obviously. Some are the same. There are some people like C.S. Lewis is a mentor of mine. No, I never met him, obviously, but I've read almost everything he's written. And there are some things that I read every year. For instance, the book Mere Christianity that C.S. Lewis wrote, great book. I recommend it to everyone. I reread that book every year. Brennan Manning is another one. I never met him face to face. I have friends that do. We have mutual acquaintances, but he's no longer with us here on this earth. But his book, Ragamuffin Gospel, is a book that changed my life, saved my life. And I reread that book every year. So yes, I still have mentors. Most of them at this point are authors and podcasters and things like that. I don't necessarily talk to them face to face, but they're shaping the way that I see the world. Now, I do have a few that are still people that I talk to, but the majority of my mentors at this point are not that. And I think that's okay. Authors, podcasters, culture shapers, things like that. He asked me who I recommended as a mentor. That's going to change for everyone. If you're interested in the same things I'm interested in, then I could recommend the people that have shaped and continue to shape the way I see the world and challenge me to grow and be the best I can be and to improve and, all those things, hold me accountable. I mentioned C.S. Lewis. I mentioned Brennan Manning. There's a pastor in Kansas City I talk about it in my book. His name's Adam Hamilton. I think Adam is great. And you don't ever have to meet these people those three, because they've written so much stuff that's out there that you can access, and reading their stuff is a way of them mentoring you. So Matthew Vines is another one. He's written some great books that I recommend. David P. Gushee is a theologian and a thinker and an academic that I love, I respect, and I recommend him as well. So those are just a few. As far as music goes, I think that's going to be different for everyone. I share very often who the artists that I like, and an artist can be a mentor of yours without you ever meeting them. If you're like me, I just study everything about the artists I love. I'm a nerd when it comes to like knowing how they produce their music and the process that goes into how they write. And I think that you can grow from that. You can be mentored by that, even if you never are in the same room with them. So you're the artist, musician, if you're a musician or an artist of any sort, the artists that inspire you can be mentors of yours as well. So seek out, people that are on the same journey that you're on, who are farther down the road than you are and who are where you want to be someday. I recommend that. And he said, who needs mentors? Everyone needs mentors. Everyone does. And everyone honestly has mentors, even if they don't call them that. Everyone has people in their life that shape the way they think, that affect their perspective, that help them form their opinions, whose opinions they value, and who they're accountable to. Those are your mentors. If you don't think you have mentors, ask yourself those questions. Who helps shape the way I think? Whose opinion matters to me? Who has helped form my opinions? Who inspires me? Who do I go to when I need advice? Those are your mentors. If you've never called them that, even, that's what they are. So be careful. Be careful about who those people are in your life, because they will shape the way you see the world, the way you treat the world, the way you love the world, and the journey that you're on. John asked me, did there come a point, or when did the point come when you felt like you could mentor others, and how did you know when that time came? Well, yes, there definitely came a time. I don't know exactly. I can't pinpoint an exact day or year. I know that at some point I realized that people were valuing my experience and asking for my opinion about things more than they had been. And I recognized at some point that the advice I was giving was helpful to them, that they were growing because of it. And then I recognized within me a desire to help people, to pass on what I had been given, both in experience and in wisdom that was just imparted to me through authors and friends and acquaintances and artists. So I think for everyone who's on a growth path, and hopefully we all are, that yes, there will come a point where you realize that people are looking to you for counsel, for advice, for inspiration. Hopefully you'll want to give that. And the other reality is this, is that people are always watching you no matter who you are. They're always listening. You're influencing someone no matter who you are, unless you just never leave your house, But if you're interacting with people at all, you're influencing them, which is kind of a sobering thought. I think that a lot of people don't live with that awareness, that self-awareness, that the things they say, the things they do actually do influence people. So in that regard, everyone's being mentored and everyone's a mentor. The question is, are we being intentional about it? I think it's best when we're intentional about it. I have spent now a long time being intentional about both who mentors me and, quite honestly, who I spend the most time mentoring, because everyone's going to have different sort of levels of circle, like your inner circle, and then, a sort of inner circle. And then, so you've got people who are way out here who maybe are just influenced by what they hear about you, or what you know, in my case, maybe they're influenced by, they listen to my record, or they watch a podcast, or they read my book, right? And they're kind of out here, maybe. And then there's people who are acquainted with me personally, who I talk to, once a month, a couple times a year. So in that regard, I probably maybe have more of an influence on them in that way. And then there's people who I talk to every day, every week. Those people who are, for instance, part of the Fountain community that I help lead and serve at. And so those people are definitely being shaped more by my life, by my thoughts, by my perspective, than people who maybe just read my book or listen to a record. That's true for all of us. And I've learned over time to be very cognizant and intentional about who I invest the most time in, and who I allow to spend large amounts of time investing and pouring into me. and shaping the way that I think and see the world and treat the world. So that's what I recommend to everyone. Be intentional about not just who is pouring into you, but about who you're pouring into. Because you're not just being mentored, whether you realize it or not. You're influencing other people, you're mentoring other people. So why not be intentional about it? Why not take a look around in the world that you live in and try to identify the people who could benefit the most from your experience, from your wisdom, even from your mistakes, and then give some real thought to how you can spend more time being intentional about pouring into them. So those are my thoughts on mentors. I talk more about it in the book. You can get Becoming Loud and Brave at Amazon.com. You can get it on Kindle. You can get it in hardback or paperback. You can get an audio version of it on my Bandcamp site. Go to Bandcamp at charlieeash.com and you can get the audiobook version there as well. So I hope this has helped you and inspired you to think about mentors. It's part of what being loud and brave is about, really. It's about growing, helping others grow, and sharing our experience with those around us. All right? So have a great day. Be brave, and I'll see you soon.